Hello, Math 20-3. So in this video, I'm just going to go over the quiz that you guys wrote yesterday. We'll start with question 1. It says, which of the following diagrams is the correct solution to? I don't know why it says diagrams. So which of the following is the correct solution to? When you get an equation like this, remember your goal is to get x by itself. To get x by itself, you move things from one side to the other side of the equal sign by using opposite operations. So there is an order I have to move, right? I have to move additions and subtractions first. So I have to move that minus 4 by doing the opposite of minus 4, which is adding 4. That would then give me 2x's left over equals 2 plus 4 is 6. The next number I would have to move is that 2. This means 2 times x, right? If there's nothing between the 2 and the x, it means multiply. So the opposite of multiply is divide both sides by 2. That gives you x equals 3. Would have been A. All right, looking at B. Which of the following would be the correct first step to solving? When you get a question with brackets, the first step is to multiply into brackets. Right? We want to get rid of those things. So we need to take that 7 and we need to multiply it by 3 to become 21x. And we take that 7 and we multiply it by negative 2 to become negative 14. Equals, then I need to take that negative 4, multiply it by 6 to become negative 24. And then take that negative 4, multiply it by negative 5 to become positive, so plus 20x. If you look, that would be answer A. So whenever we have brackets, our first job is to get rid of those brackets by expanding, multiplying into the brackets. Number 3, determine the solution to this. When you have a fraction like that, the best thing you could do is get rid of those fractions by taking whatever number's on the bottom and multiplying both sides by that. So if I multiply both sides of the equation by 8, it will cancel out that fraction, and I will now have 3x plus 5 equals 32. So for those fraction questions, the best thing you can do is get rid of the fractions by multiplying everything that's on the bottom to the top. You then can do your opposite operation. So I move the 5 first by subtracting 5 to both sides. That gives me 3x equals 27. Then I can get rid of that 3 by dividing both sides by 3. Leaves me with x equals 9, which was A. Number 4, solve. So if we're solving that question, first thing we notice is that there's brackets. We want to get rid of brackets. The way you get rid of brackets is by multiplying into the bracket. So 3 times 3 is 9. Multiply the 9x. Multiply the 3 by the negative 2 to get negative 6. That equals, then you take this 2 and you multiply that into the brackets. 2 times 2 is 4x. 2 times 5 is plus 10. Cool. This is the first time that we now have x's on both sides of the equal sign. We have a 9x over here and a 4x over here. So we have to move all the x's to one side to be able to solve this question. Whatever number is the least is the number we want to move, and you move by adding or subtracting. So I'm going to subtract 4x to the other side. That leaves me with 5x over here minus 6 equals 10. And I got 5 because 9 minus 4 is 5. Then I can start doing my opposite operations again. So add 6 to both sides. That gives me 5x equals 16. And then I divide both sides by 5. That gives me x equals 16 divided by 5 is a decimal. I believe it's 3.2. But if you look at your answers, C is the answer. It's 16 divided by 5. This one, we're using this information for the next 2 questions. Number 5 says, which equation would be Darian right in step 2? So if we're looking here, Darian's got his work shown. Pretend you're Darren doing his work. The first thing Darren would have to do or the next thing he'd have to do after step 1 is he would have to multiply this 8 into the brackets to become 8x minus 24. You then also have to multiply this negative 6 into the brackets. Make sure it's a negative 6 you're multiplying. So when I multiply that negative 6, it becomes negative 6x. And then negative 6 times 4 becomes negative 24. Those negatives are important. Equals, and then on the right-hand side, we have a 4 outside the bracket, so it becomes 8. Multiply that 4 in, negative 12x. So step 2 should have looked like that after we'd multiplied into the brackets. If you look at the answers, I believe D is your answer. A is very close, but notice that they didn't multiply by negative 6. They multiplied by positive 6. So you had to have a negative 24. Awesome. Number 6 is if Darren continued to step 3, what is the solution? So let's just finish solving this thing. We have this equation right here. We have 8x minus 24 minus 6x minus 24 equals 8 minus 12x. First thing I noticed is that after I multiplied, I had like terms, right? I have 8x minus 6x could combine to become 2x. I also had negative 24, and negative 24 becomes negative 48. On the right-hand side of the equal sign, there's no like terms, so I can't do anything. Now I get to that situation where I have x's on both sides, so I need to move my x over by adding 12x from one side to the other side. That gives me 14x minus 48 equals 8. I'm going to move that 48 to the other side by adding 48. That gives me 14x equals 56. Then I divide both sides by 14, which would give me x equals, I believe it's 4. If we look down, 4. Fantastic. That's a hard question. Just an FYI, if I were you, I'd be pausing this video, going back and seeing if you can do these questions on your own, then listen to me, or even just go back and listen to it a couple times so you really see what the steps are. Okay, number 7. Now we got all these fractions. So if we need to solve that, the first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of those fractions. So if I see a 4 on the bottom, that means I have to multiply everything by 4. Now, sometimes that'll cancel out, right? Like that 4 and that 4 will cancel out. And that 4 and that 4 will cancel out. But that middle one won't because the bottom is a 2. Then I still have another fraction. So I have this 2 on the bottom. I need to get rid of that 2 on the bottom by multiplying everything by 2 now. These 2's will cancel, but the other ones won't. So I should have something like this. I should have 2x from right here. Plus 4 times 11 is 44. That's from right here. Equals 7 times 2, which is 14. So when you have fractions, you get rid of the fractions by multiplying everything by whatever's on the bottom. I then can subtract 44 to the other side, right? We're doing our opposite operations. That gives me 2x equals negative 30. Divide both sides by 2. X equals negative 15. The answer is B. Awesome. Number 8. The sum of 3 consecutive odd numbers is 165. Which of the following equations will be used to determine the 3 integers? Okay, so remember consecutive means in a row. So if we had just regular numbers in a row, that means we have n plus 1, n plus 2, n plus 3, and so on and so forth. That's for regular consecutive numbers. These consecutive numbers are odd. So the way we would get odd consecutive numbers is you would have n, that's your first number. And then instead of adding 1, you'd have to add 2. Right? So if you imagine, like n is, say, pick an odd number, say n is 3. If I wanted to get to the next odd number, I would have to add 2 to get to 5. If I added 1, I would have the number 4, which is even, right? So instead of adding just 1 like we normally would, we had to add 2. That means to get the next odd integer, which would be, say, 7, I would have had to do n and then plus 4, right? And then I would go n plus 6, and so on and so forth. If you look, that would be answer D. N plus 2, n plus 4. That's consecutive odd numbers. Number 9 says the sum of two numbers is 74. One of the numbers is 2 more than 3 times the other number. Remember with these questions, we wanted to build equations. So it says the sum of two numbers is 74. Sum means addition of two numbers, so x plus y equals 74. It means when you add two numbers together, that should equal 74. The second equation gives us our second solution, or our second sentence creates our second equation. So it says one of the numbers, let's just say x, is means equals, 2 more means 2 plus, 3 times the other number would be 3y. So now we can kind of combine these two equations together. If I know that x equals this, that means I can change this x to be this thing. So now I have 2 plus 3y instead of x. And then plus y equals 74. That means I have 2 plus 4y equals 74. If I subtract my 2 to the other side, that gives me 4y equals 72. And I divide by 4 to get y equals, not going to be 20, 19, 18. I think it's going to be 18. So one of my numbers is 18. If I look at my answers, only D has 18, so the other number must have been 56. Number 10. You are going to get another question like this, so it's a money question. It says, Mr. Quinney has $11 in dimes and quarters in his pocket. If he has 3 times more dimes than quarters, which equation would represent this situation? Okay, so I have $11 in my pocket. And I have quarters and dimes. Okay, so that means dimes. Let's start with that. Dimes are worth 0.1 plus quarters. Quarters are worth 0.25. Awesome. I left these blanks because these blanks are where you put how many of each coin you have. So it says that he has 3 times more dimes than quarters. So that means if x is my quarters, I would have 3 times that would be my dimes. So if I go back to this equation, that means in my dime spot, I could put 3x. In my quarter spot, I could put x. And if you look, that matches up with answer C. It's not in the same order, but it is the same answer. Right? There's my quarters times x. There's my dimes times 3x. Wicked. Number 11, solve for that. This is one of the more straightforward questions. So that's x plus 15.7 equals negative 18.1. We have to subtract that 15.7 to the other side. It gives me x equals negative 33.8. C. Number 12. This is the value of x that satisfies this equation is. All right, so I see brackets. I need to get rid of those brackets by multiplying the 4 in. That gives me 4x minus 28 equals 20. And that was 4 times x is 4x, and 4 times 7 is 28. I then am going to add 28 from one side to the other. That gives me 4x equals 48. And then you divide both sides by 4. Making x equal 12. A. Number 13, determine the solution of this equation. So the first thing I see is that fraction. I want to get rid of that fraction. I'm going to multiply everything by 3. So those fractions would go away. And I would now have just x minus 7 times 3 is 21 equals 5 times 3 is 15. Now the fractions are gone. It's easy for me to just add 21 to the other side to get x equals 36. All right, we got this question here. Again, we have a fraction, so we want to get rid of that fraction. We're going to multiply both sides by x. So those x's will cancel out, and I have 2.8 equals 0.7 times x, which is just x. Then I can divide both sides by 0.7, like that. And that would give me 4 equals x. I also showed some of you guys that when you have a fraction like that, where you can take these numbers and switch them so that you end up with 2.8 divided by 0.7 equals x. And then you just have to put this in your calculator, which would give you 4 equals x. All right, this one. We have x's on both sides, right? So I need to move my x's over. I'm going to subtract 3x from the right side to the left side so that my x's are on one side of the equal sign. That would leave me with 4 x's on the left minus 2.4 equals 1.2. I'm then going to add 2.4 to both sides. That gives me 4x equals 3.6. And I'm going to divide both sides by 4. And that should give me x equals 0.9, I believe. Yeah, that sounds right. Awesome. Number 3. Again, we got those brackets. So to get rid of brackets, we multiply in. 0.2 times 30 is 6. 0.2 times 20 should be 4x equals, multiply this 3 into the brackets, becomes 6x. 3 times 7 becomes plus 21. Again, we got to get all of our x's from one side to the other, so we're going to add 4x from the left to the right. That gives me 6 equals 10x plus 21. I'm going to subtract 21 from one side to the other. That gives me negative 15 equals 10x. And divide both sides by 10. Negative 1.5 equals x. Number 4. Number 4, they actually tell you what the solution is. It says evaluate the expression for when x equals negative 2. So what they're saying is calculate what this equals when you change x to be negative 2. So that means I should have negative 5, 4 minus 3 times negative 2. Like that. To evaluate something, remember you want to do inside the brackets first. So you would have to figure out this part first. So that would be negative 5, and then 4 minus 3 times negative 2 would end up being 10. Right? I got that because negative 2 times negative 3 would be plus 6. 4 plus 6 equals 10. Then negative 5 times 10 is negative 50. So that's what my answer would have been. Number 20, a total of 905 was collected in quarters and dimes. If there are 3 more dimes than quarters, how many quarters were collected? Okay, so to do this mathematically, we say you have $9.05 in dimes, which is 0.1, plus all your quarters, which is 0.25. And then you have to fill in the blanks here. It says there's 3 more dimes than quarters. So I don't know how many quarters there are, but I know that there's 3 more dimes than quarters. So this represents my dimes, this represents my quarters. And then I need to solve that equation. Because there's brackets, I need to multiply into the brackets. That gives me 9.05 equals 0.3 plus 0.1x plus 0.25x. I collect my like terms, those two right there. Gives me 9.05 equals 0.3 plus 0.35x. I then go ahead and start solving by minusing my 0.3 from one side to the other. That would give me 8.75 equals 0.35x. Then I divide by 0.35. And that will tell me that I have 25x. Remember, x was our quarters, so that means my answer is 25. I have 25 quarters. Wonderful. This one says solve for x. To solve for x, you need to move that 10 from one side to the other. That gives me 5x equals 110. And then divide by 5. That gives me x equals 22. Right, just opposite operations. I think this is the last one. Yep, it is. So it says solve for x. We have all these things right here. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to recognize that on the left-hand side, I have like terms, right? So that 2x plus 5x would be 7x. I'm also going to see there's some more like terms. I have -3 plus 8. Those would add together to be plus 5. And then on the right-hand side, it equals 12. To solve, I'm going to do opposite operations. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. That gives me 7x equals 7. And then divide both sides by 7 to get x equals 1. And you're done. That quiz, I did go over it fast, right? So you maybe have to watch the video twice or do some pausing so you can write down what I'm talking about, or just pause, rewind to really listen a couple times in a row. Tomorrow's test will be very similar to this quiz. So if you could study this quiz, that's the best way to go about your business. All right, take care. I'll see you soon.